If you're like me, you probably spend a lot of time on Pinterest getting ideas. It's a really great place to find inspiration for your sewing projects, but it can also be completely overwhelming because it's like drinking from a fire hose of inspiration. There's so much there. And if you're like me, you probably sometimes get stuck in analysis paralysis because of the sheer volume of ideas that you can find there. So the question is, how can you effectively collect inspiration without feeling totally frozen with indecision over all the possibilities? So in this video, Haley's going to be joining me, and we're going to share our processes for organizing all of our many, many ideas using Pinterest. So no more analysis paralysis, just an organized place to store your ideas and plan your projects. But before we get to that, if you're someone who's interested in making your own clothing with more intention and joy, you're definitely in the right place here at Seamwork. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can follow along with us and never miss one of our weekly videos. All right, so if you feel as overwhelmed by Pinterest as you do inspired by all the ideas, Haley and I are here to help today because we use it a lot, both in our personal lives and for work. So I think we have a lot of tips that we can share with you today. So we're going to start by asking, I want to ask Haley this, what is the nerdiest thing that you use Pinterest for?
Well, right now I'm planning a trip and I use Pinterest to plan like my travel. So it's like very detailed, like to the extent in which I use it to research, and then I use it from there to kind of like break down an itinerary and the plans. And, when you're like in a neighborhood, you're like, I don't want to like pay for transport somewhere else, so I'm going to hit everything in that neighborhood. So like the way that I use it for my travel plans is probably a little nerdy. The other thing is like, just like the sheer extent to which I use Pinterest is like just like a little bit over the top. So I would say that is maybe a little nerdy.
Yeah, same. I think as we start to delve into these tips, that's going to become apparent, like how nerdy we are just about using Pinterest in general. I think for me, I have Pinterest boards for everything. So I have Pinterest boards for cute animals that I see. I like have Pinterest boards for like travel and things like that, recipes. Obviously, a lot of people use it for that. I have one that's just for pre-Raphaelite paintings because I like that.
Why not?
That type of artwork. Like anything that just appeals to me, I make a Pinterest board for it. I don't know. It's a desire to collect things, I guess. But I'm pretty nerdy about it, and I try to keep pretty organized, especially when I'm using it as a tool for things like sewing, like travel, like you said, like cooking. I have different systems for each of those things, and I feel like I've learned a lot about organizing my stuff, but especially about organizing my sewing and my ideas for sewing through Pinterest.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Haley's going to share a couple of her ideas, things that she does with Pinterest that might be helpful to you, and then I'm going to share a couple of mine. There's a lot of overlap because some of the ideas we both use, so we'll talk about that a little bit. So you want to start us off, Haley?
Yes. So idea number one is to create a core style board. I know that I do this and you do this as well. And the idea behind this is that I think that it's kind of useful to have these kind of big umbrella boards where you can put a bunch of stuff, because a lot of times you're going to come across an image when you're just like, living your life on the internet as you do. And it's nice to have kind of a place to just like chuck the miscellaneous style stuff that you find. I like having a core style board because I think that it really helps me to assess my personal style, to see kind of the common threads that run between them, see things that are kind of outliers, so I can see like, am I really attracted to that particular style? Do I just think that the woman who's wearing it is pretty, or like, do I just like the scenery behind this person, that kind of thing. So I think that having a core style board is really helpful for me. I revisit it and start kind of from scratch every few years just because style evolves, and it's never like a radical shift. It's just more of I think it's just a nice housekeeping kind of activity to do.
Yeah, I do the same thing. So I have a core style board as well. It's even called the same thing. And I also update it maybe once every year or every 2 years. I create a new one and just kind of start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that it really helps me when I am trying to make decisions about things, like if I'm deciding what my sewing queue is going to be for the next season, for example, if I'm going through the Design Your Wardrobe course and trying to, really hone what I actually want to sew, then returning to that core style board, which has sort of a mood board and encapsulation of what I think my own style is, helps to kind of focus me and center me on what represents who I am at this moment in time versus what I see out in the world, like you're saying, just things that look beautiful, because I can't make all the things that I think look attractive, because there's a lot of them out there, especially on Pinterest. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to kind of like weed through all of that noise when you have this central place to put things that you really identify with. And I don't just put fashion inspiration, I'll put like paintings I find beautiful, color palettes, even like a screenshot from like a movie that I'm like really inspired by. All of that kind of stuff goes straight there into the core style board.
Yeah, colors, flowers, places, all
Yeah,
kinds of
totally.
things that I feel like represent me in some way aesthetically.
Yeah, definitely. Create the mood, like a mood board does. That kind of feeds into my next idea, and that is to use feeder boards. So I talked about the core style board, and that's kind of a feeder board of sort because I look to it and sometimes I repin those ideas to various boards. You mentioned Design Your Wardrobe. I definitely do that. But using a system of feeder boards can be really helpful. And an example that I'll use is that when I'm doing my job as the pattern designer here at Seamwork, I obviously do a ton of research for each season and for each pattern. And I always have these kinds of feeder boards. And that's where the designs start in lots of ways. So I have one for spring, summer, and then I have another one for fall, winter. So when it comes time to start the spring design, say, I can go straight to that feeder board, my spring summer feeder board, and I can look and see some of the patterns. And that kind of coupled with all of the other research that I do with customers and just like historical data that we have helps me to create a picture of what we want to do. And so I find it really helpful to have these kinds of feeder boards. This is something that you use as well, right?
Yeah, I have something similar. And I think the other great thing about having these kind of seasonal feeder boards is that you can see what has been appealing to you in that season in past years, because you can add to it over a long period of time. And that helps me because sometimes there are things that come up that are trends, and it's hard to know if it's just a trend that year that you're going to forget about and not care about next year, or if it's something that is more of a long-term thing for you personally, if it's something that just appeals to you personally. And so I think having that reference for, let's say, spring or summer every year and looking back at it and seeing, oh yeah, this appealed to me 3 years ago, it still appeals to me, that tells me something. So that's another reason that I like using them.
Yeah. Once I start to kind of recognize those patterns, and I feel like this is one of the strengths of using a tool like Pinterest is it allows you to recognize those patterns. There's a few tools within Pinterest that I find really helpful. The first tool is that you can move things in batches. So let's say I'm designing for spring and I'm seeing a ton of blouses that have ruffles at the neckline. I can then take all of those blouses and I can migrate them over to a board that's specific to the season that I'm designing for. And then from there, I can create a section. This is a tool that I use a ton, is kind of sectioning off things so then I can see a little bit more clearly. That's usually a little further in the design process for me.
Yeah.
The next way that I really like to use Pinterest is to create a project queue for myself. So we've mentioned Design Your Wardrobe a couple times, which is a really fantastic tool that we offer at Seamwork. at the end of each round of Design Your Wardrobe, I always like to turn my Pinterest board into a design cue for myself. So I'll take my board, I'll add sections, and each section will be a garment I intend to sew. For this particular season, I know already I'm going to make a green coat. So that section on the green coat, I have some fabric ideas for different stores that I might be looking at some green wools to make my coat. I have some pattern ideas. I have all of the original inspiration behind that garment so I don't lose focus of the intent behind what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I find that to be really helpful. It's also helpful because you can move boards around, so you can quite literally make a cue that has an actual order to it.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. I have used Pinterest for that in the past for creating that project queue, and I found it pretty helpful. I've moved to using a different tool, which I'm going to talk about in another video, but I think Pinterest is a really great choice as well. I found it to be really, really helpful, especially when I learned that you can move things around like that. So I have a couple tips for myself that I would like to share. I use a lot of these same ideas that Haley's just talked about, but I have a couple others that have been really, really helpful for me. One is to create a board for styling ideas. So I have a board that I just call outfit ideas. And when I see something that I like, either out on the web somewhere or on Pinterest, I can add it to that board, and I have it sectioned off into different garment types. So when I notice that I see a lot of outfits I like that involve, for example, black jeans, just as an example, I can create a subboard within there for outfits that involve black jeans. And then I have blazers, I have all different kinds of subboards, and that really helps me to see how I can style either garments I already own or a garment that I'm thinking about making. So if there's, for example, let's say that I am thinking about making a plaid jacket, I can use that board to start collecting outfit ideas that involve plaid jackets, and I can really see, is this something that I would be able to wear with things that I already own? Or is this something that maybe there's only like a couple options and I'm not really sure how I would wear it? I just like it because I've seen it and it looks cute. So it really helps me to make those kinds of decisions, and also gives me a lot of ideas for outfits when I'm getting dressed and I'm not sure what to wear. I can do that. And saying this out loud sounds kind of like nuts, like how many boards I have, but it really helps. And I think when you're somebody who's spending time sewing, you're actually making your own clothing and you're spending the hours and hours it takes to do that. I think it's really worth the time that you put into the design part of it, the thinking part of it. And this is a tool that can help you do that. So it might seem a little nuts or a little overboard, but it's fun. So
nothing is too much when it is in the name of sewing.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, my personal take on
it. Yeah. So that's one thing that I do that I really, really find helpful. The other board that I have that might be helpful to you to use something similar is a Wishlist board. And that's kind of similar. It's divided into different garment types. I actually use it not just for sewing ideas, so not just like a wish list of things that I might want to sew, also things I might want to buy. So if I, for example, need a new pair of boots or think I might need a new pair of boots, I can start collecting ideas there. And things that even I need for the home or want for the home, I can have a separate part of it that's just for home stuff. So this is really helpful for a couple reasons. I think the biggest reason is it gives me some time to think about the things that I think that I want, and instead of just like buying them willy-nilly, putting them in there, really giving myself the space and the time to revisit and think about, do I actually want this? That's particularly helpful when it comes to sewing.
Yeah.
Because you're spending a lot of time making something. So you want to make sure that it's something that you're actually going to want a few months from now or a year from now. If that's important. Maybe that's not important to you. To me, it's important. So having a wish list board gives me just some time to think about it. And it also just keeps everything organized, so I feel less like I'm, kind of just going out and spending or going out and making impulsive decisions about what things to invite into my life. I feel a lot more comfortable with it if I can really think it through. So my wish list board helps me with that. And it's just so helpful for sewing because, you know, you might think you need a certain wardrobe staple because, you know, other people tell you should have this in your closet.
Yeah.
But then, you know, maybe a month later, you're like, actually, you know, I have something like that already. I don't really need to own this particular thing. So I really find it helpful to give myself that time to think.
I don't have a sewing wish list, and you have totally sold me. I'm gonna start one.
I really like it. It's one of my favorite boards to revisit whenever I'm doing Design Your Wardrobe and really trying to think about what I'm actually going to wear, what I'm actually going to use, because I've built up this wish list over such a long period of time. It has a lot of things on it, but oftentimes I'm not even going to sew that thing, or I'm not going to ever buy that thing because eventually I'll realize that I don't really need it.
Yeah, it's a wish list, not a need list.
Yeah, exactly.
It's allowed to be fun.
Yeah. And here are 5 additional Pinterest tips that you can use. A lot of people don't know this, so this is a hot tip, but you can actually rearrange things on Pinterest. So you can click and drag and move things into the order that you want them, which is really helpful. You can also move things in batches. So click on that Organize button, and you can consolidate your ideas by moving things all at once. Third tip, if you see an outfit you like, use the visual search feature to zoom in on a particular garment and find similar inspiration. You can also use group boards with your crafty friends and share inspiration and make sewing plans together. You can share interesting details you find or patterns that you'd like to make. Finally, use the Pinterest descriptions to your advantage. Take notes about how you might want to hack a pattern or what kind of fabric you'd like to use. Or when you pin a fabric, you can know what pattern you're thinking of using it for. That's it for us today. So if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to let us know by hitting the like button. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you get all our weekly videos. If you love using Pinterest, you probably also like to plan your sewing out. So be sure to check out our free downloadable sewing planner at seamwork.com/go/free planner. We'll put a link to it below. And if you'd like to read articles in addition to watching videos, head over to seamwork.com where we post articles to go with our episodes every single week. We also have a podcast called Seamwork Radio where we talk every week about practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with more intention and joy, because that's what we're all about. Just search for Seamwork Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can also find us on social media at Seamwork. And if you'd like to join Seamwork and become part of our private community, plus get access to hundreds of sewing patterns and dozens of sew-along classes, our YouTube subscribers get a 50% off lifetime discount when you join at seamwork.com/go/YouTube50. And we'll put a link to that below. So wherever you choose to join us, I hope you have a great rest of your week. And remember to have fun and be yourself, because that's what sewing's all about.